Next, let me go on to deal with probation. The range and effectiveness of non-custodial sentences has expanded and greatly improved. But again, the central issue is confidence. When the public and sentences are convinced of their effectiveness, such sentences of probation can become an even greater feature of our justice system. Obviously, prison has to remain the only option for offenders who pose a threat to our society or a danger. But the evidence is that for short sentences, community punishments can be more effective at reducing reoffending than a commensurate time in prison. And community punishments, as we know, can include intensive supervision, mandatory drug or alcohol treatment, behavioural classes, educational requirements, along with physical labour. And for many offenders, this can require more of them than a short spell in prison. More importantly, it provides the opportunity to get to the bottom of the cause of offending. And what's significant is that even now in the United States, where the incarceration rate in the United States is 5 times the level of the United Kingdom, and ours is amongst the highest in Europe, even in the United States, it is very striking that they are now focusing on effective community punishments as an alternative to custody. And I'm not saying, let's be clear about this, that the courts have got to do one or the other. The courts have got to make their own decisions. I've seen in my own community in Blackburn that sometimes, quite frequently, a short custodial sentence is the thing that both punishes the offender when they've been, frankly, taking the mickey out of the courts, and it also gives a respite to the local community and can work. But the important thing is you have a range of sentences, and the courts have confidence in their appropriate use of each one. And it's how these sentences are used. We need to start talking about unpaid work, which at least is away from some of the terrible euphemisms which have allowed the criminal justice system to be incomprehensible to the public. Unpaid work does mean what it says, but we also need to call it community payback as well, because that also tells you what it's about. And in London, there are 265 community payback projects, last year amounting to 330,000 hours of unpaid work, and it's really important that we get that across. My last point is simply about this community justice coalition, which is where I began. It's been a common theme throughout my speech, the importance of different groups and individuals working together for this common purpose and for common benefit. There has been big improvements. At an organisational level nationally, we now have the National Criminal Justice Board, and their local criminal justice boards are bringing greater cooperation across the system. The creation of the Ministry of Justice is, I think, another catalyst for change. And at a more practical level, neighbourhood policing is getting more police on the streets where they are needed the most. They're the visible faces of the criminal justice system, and the relationships which they forge with local people go a long way to improving confidence in justice. When I stand up and say that I know that crime has come down by at least 30%, I say that not only because I happen to take an interest in the official statistics, but also because of what I know from my own constituency of Blackburn. We've actually seen bigger drops in crime, but especially burglary and vehicle crime, but much else besides. But alongside that, I have witnessed a very significant change in the community's confidence through process of residents' meetings, which I got going 5 years ago, in a sense out of desperation, through a public meeting that broke out in the public bar of a public house that I happened to be popping into for a quick refreshment, about 2 murders which had happened in the same street opposite that week. It was a complete statistical freak, but these things sometimes happen in that way. And so I said, in order to get out of the pub in one piece, I'd have a meeting in the community centre a week later, and I called a meeting. 250 people turned up. It was very ugly. I said to the police chief, "You've got to come." I said to the leader of the council, chief executive, "You're coming too." Got local councillors there. It was ugly. Anyway, I sort of was busking, and I said during the meeting, "Well, we're going to have to do a report on what we're doing. We can't just be, we'll feel your pain and we're pushing off." And there were all sorts of other things going on, race issues, about the fact there's a hospital being closed for a good reason, because we've got a new one. But that was a big urban myth was going around that was going to be turned into the largest Islamic college in Europe. So that was really helpful as well. And all the rest of it. Completely untrue, let me tell you. Absolutely untrue. So, got these residents' meetings going, said we'd have proper report back, said we had further ones, and then we realised that we'd alighted on a very obvious formula for telling the public what's going on, and above all for inviting them to tell us what they wanted in their community. We now had 50 of these round the town on a rota. The police chief brings his constables and the sergeants, the PCSOs, the chief executive, the relevant council officials for that, the guy who runs the social housing. Now we've got the head of the PCT there too. We haven't got anybody from the courts, interestingly, but that will be my next challenge. And the last 4 meetings like this, in really tough areas, there's been spontaneous applause for the police and the PCSOs, and the issues have turned out to be the very prosaic, pressing ones about planning systems and parking and so on, and not about crime and violence on the streets. It's really interesting. And it's about community confidence, giving people confidence. And I think the same applies, and we should need to do the same across the community justice system, including the courts. So I think you've got the message about what I want to see happen, building on the institutional and structural changes to real attitudinal changes in the criminal justice system. Because going back to that sentiment expressed by Lord Denning, which I mentioned right at the beginning, justice is rooted in confidence. Thank you very much indeed.